What's up, everyone? The patrons have spoken, and for our first Pokemon of 2020, next up we have Hariyama, the Arm Thrust Pokemon. Hariyama is a 3rd gen Pokemon that's based on a sumo wrestler, and as a matter of fact, its name is a sumo ranking. Today we'll see what weight class Hariyama Grande found itself in the competitive scene. So, how good was Hariyama actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Hariyama wasn't an amazing Pokemon in its debut generation of Advanced, as evidenced by its tiering placement of Borderline. Offensively, it was outdone by Machamp, Breloom, and Blaziken. However, on the flip side of defense, it did have a unique, specific niche that made it quite usable in the hands of a talented trainer. Its mono fighting typing meant it resisted Tyranitar's Rock Slide, while also not being weak to any moves Tyranitar could use, and it could prey on T-Tar's quadruple fighting weakness for an effortless one-hit KO with its stab. But the same could be said for Hitmontop, who also has Intimidate and Rapid Spin. So why was Hitmontop considered a bad gimmick in Advanced, and Hariyama considered one of the better BL Pokemon that was actually worth using in important battles? Well, knockoff, that's why. This unique move allowed Hariyama to remove the tier's abundant leftovers, as many tier staples such as Skarmory and Swampert relied on leftovers as their sole source of recovery. And those such as Zapdos and Suicune that were affected by Sandstorm would find themselves going from having resilience and longevity to being on a timer. In addition to the ever-raging Sandstorm, this accentuated the effect of other passive damage such as Spikes, Toxic, and Leech Seed, which gave Hariyama a legitimate niche as an integral part of certain stall teams. They also appreciated Hariyama's ability to counter Tyranitar and actually threaten Curse Snorlax. The Thick Fat ability, shrugging off ice and fire moves, enhanced Hariyama's Tyranitar countering ability even more, as it allowed it to switch into Tyranitar specially based sets without needing special defense investment. But of course, Hariyama had its notable flaws that its team had to keep in mind. It had no recovery outside of rest and was affected by both Sandstorm and Spikes, meaning its team needed to employ tactics such as Wish, Rapid Spin, and Heal Bell to get the most use out of it. Hariyama's lack of a recovery also meant it needed assistance against Tyranitar in the long term, lest Hariyama being at high health be the only thing standing between its team and getting run over by Tyranitar, as even with physical defense investment, it wouldn't appreciate Choice Band Focus Punch, or even getting chipped down by repeated earthquakes, so that it would eventually be in range for one boosted by Dragon Dance. However, it wasn't too tough to fit these on the stall teams that Hariyama was used on. For example, Claydol was a great backup Tyranitar counter that didn't mind Earthquake or Focus Punch while removing Spikes with Rapid Spin. If Blissey used Wish as Tyranitar switched into it, Hariyama could come in and heal off any damage Tyranitar might have done. Blissey and Celebi could also use Heal Bell to help with Hariyama's rest. The latter Pokemon, of course, appreciating Hariyama's knockoff, effectively increasing the damage of its Leech Seed. Hariyama was quite a specific Pokemon in Advance, but it was one of the most annoying Pokemon to deal with and had a legitimately solid niche that any true Gen 3 player respected. The prominence of stronger fighting types in 4th gen OU such as Infernape, Lucario, and a significantly buffed Breloom meant that Hariyama was usually left in the dust. But Hariyama did have a brief moment of legitimate viability when lead Machamp was first terrorizing the metagame. The original Machamp set was slow and bulky to survive Azelf's Psychic, with Lumberry as the item to defeat Roserade leads alongside Bullet Punch. Hariyama would fake out on the first turn to safely activate its Toxic Orb, then, with the help of a good chunk of speed investment, lay waste to Machamp with a Guts boosted close combat. Fake Out dealt with Focus Sashes, while its Poison guarded it against Roserade's Sleep. But sadly, this niche was short-lived. Machamp eventually switched over to Focus Sash for its item as a countermeasure to powerful attacks such as Choice Specs Heatran's Overheat, Choice Band Azelf's Zen Headbutt, Choice Band Dragonite's Outrage, and Choice Specs Zapdos' Hidden Power Flying. Since it was running Sash, Machamp didn't need to run Bulk and went with Max Speed, which rendered Hariyama's niche useless. Hariyama's dependence on Toxic Orb also led to an inability to adapt to the aforementioned leads, which certainly didn't help. Gallade emerged as another pseudo-Machamp lead that got the edge on Machamp itself and proved to be an overall superior choice for the role Hariyama had once filled, so at least Hariyama had its 15 minutes. In UU, Hariyama was able to smash through common defensive staples such as the Fire, Water, Grass Core, Registeel, and Chansey, utilizing either Toxic Orb or Life Orb. Also, Life Orb prevents Pokemon like Substitute Mismagius and Rotom from stalling Hariyama Hariyama out, since Life Orb doesn't activate upon hitting a sub in Gen 4. It was definitely one of the tier's scariest Pokemon, but it did have a few key issues that prevented it from rampaging through teams willy-nilly. For one, its effectiveness as a lead was severely hampered by the immense popularity of the Pixie leads like Uxie and Mesprit, and it also struggled with the anti-Pixie leads being Scyther and Spiritomb, and it also had to run from Moltres as well. These leads were far more common than leads such as Drapion, Kabutops, Cloyster, and Ambipom that Hariyama scared out. This meant Hariyama wasn't too great a lead. The problem with using it outside of the lead position was that between its low speed and mediocre defenses that were only barely assuaged by its gargantuan HP, Hariyama wouldn't be contributing much to a team's defenses and struggled to switch in more than once. Plus, it struggled to dish out damage consistently. Defensive teams had terrific counters in Weezing and Spiritomb, while offensive teams would outrun and overwhelm it easily, at worst taking a 1-for-1 trade. Now, this isn't to say Hariyama wasn't good. It was, and at times it was absolutely terrifying. It was just that its flaws meant that it was not the easiest Pokemon to autopilot with and get results out of. However, if its trainer wielded it with skill and had a decent matchup, Hariyama could absolutely bring the pain. Take, for example, Hariyama against a common balance team with Registeel, a Fire Water Grass Core, and other staples such as Clefable and Mismagius or Rotom. Hariyama can easily get outmaneuvered by this team, but if its trainer makes aggressive moves so that it faces off against Registeel and Clefable over and over again and is able to make the payback prediction against the Ghost type, and if they are able to repeat this process, then Hariyama will be absolutely devastating, leaving in its wake a crippled team easily picked off by Hariyama's teammates. Any good UU player knew what Hariyama was capable of and respected its place in the metagame. The big guy was hard to work with, but potentially hulked out like little else. Hariyama's unique strains translate remarkably well to doubles, specifically on Trick Room archetypes. Hariyama is perfectly lined up to both support Trick Room setters and then take advantage of the twisted dimensions. Hariyama's Fake Out enables setters to get their job done, and in the meantime, Hariyama can activate its orb to get a reliable attack boost and start doing work with Close Combat, Earthquake, Rock Slide, or one of its other coverage moves. However, just like in singles, Hariyama faces stiff competition from other fighting types, but in this case specifically Hitmontop, who brings the same support moves to the table, but also comes packing Intimidate and Sucker Punch. What's more, Hariyama's reliance on one of the orbs to be a true offensive threat can be a steep price to pay, although the quick pace of doubles means Hariyama can optimize slightly by running Toxic Orb, which won't outdamage Flame Orb until 4 turns in. Despite its shortcomings, Hariyama fits so well onto Trick Room teams that it's been knocking around the top levels of VGC since the early days. The unparalleled Ray Rizzle won the first of his legendary 3 consecutive World Championships with Hariyama in VGC 2010, alongside Kyogre, Ludicolo, Groudon, Dialga, and Cresselia. Ray ran a max special defense Hariyama with the standard Protect and Fake Out, along with Low Kick to trip up the huge legendaries running everywhere, and Earthquake to take advantage of Cresselia's Levitate. Ray used Hariyama in every single battle of Swiss, and while he subbed in Ludicolo for a couple of games in top 8, in the end it was his Hariyama's Low Kick that sealed the entire deal. Not a bad legacy for Hariyama in Gen 4 VGC. The introduction of Terrakion and Conkeldurr left Machamp in the dust, to say nothing of Hariyama. UU's power creep meant Hariyama wasn't able to keep up there either, and it landed in the new RU as a result. Payback no longer doing double damage on the switch meant it really struggled to handle Spiritomb, but at least against the common Slowking and Uxie, it could smash them with a brutally powerful Facade, making it unique as the RU tier's other fighting types severely struggled with them. It had the same problem of generally getting played around via low speed and bulk, while accumulating damage from the Toxic Orb it needed in order to effectively use Facade, and thus have a unique, usable niche as a fighting type in the first place, meaning it couldn't opt for Life Orb, and it was incredibly reliant on prediction in order to leave the opposing team damaged. The opponent switching to Golurk on Facade or the Psychics on Ice Punch would be equally disastrous. When Intimidate Quillfish was released, the tier gained an excellent check that even set spikes up in Hariyama's face. Come Black and White 2, and Regenerator Alomomola took over the entire tier, and between Regen as well as Protect to rack up leftovers and Hariyama's poison damage, it made it very easy and riskless to play around Hariyama without taking huge damage elsewhere. The popularity of both Alomomola and Quillfish essentially killed any genuine Hariyama viability, especially as those two meant there were less Slowking to lure in and smash. Had the 5th gen lasted a little longer, it's not likely Hariyama would have eventually dropped to NU, but instead it languishes forever in RU, unable to be used effectively. So, c'est la vie. Gen 6 brought both bad bad and good for Hariyama. On one hand, the influx of fairies meant bad news for fighting types everywhere, and Hariyama was no exception. It was no surprise that it fell through OU and UU, but even RU's Aromatisse and Grand Bull proved too much for it, and Hariyama wound up in NU. On the other hand, Knockoff was significantly buffed, making Psychics and Ghosts more potentially ruined by Hariyama than ever before, and Assault Vest was introduced, a perfect item for Hariyama as it only ever attacked and could now be used as a genuine defensive Pokemon alongside Thick Fat. The best part was that it didn't have to sacrifice offensive prowess thanks to these natural defensive options. The NU environment was such that these traits of Hariyama's came together to form an important, lasting niche whose effectiveness was unshaken by metagame shifts. Its ability to thwart the stabs of hugely threatening Pokemon in Magmortar and Aurorus was invaluable, as well as other common threats such as Lilligant and Samurai. It could even switch into Jinx's Ice Beam easily and threaten it with Bullet Punch before it could follow up with Scythe Shot. The best part was that Hariyama was guaranteed to be able to use the free turn it got by switching into these Pokemon to punish the opponent in some way, thanks to Knockoff. Even if they had the hardest wall possible in Weezing or Vileplume, it still wouldn't appreciate losing its Black Sludge. No passive recovery meant they were infinitely easier to wear down into uncomfortable spots where they could be forced into healing and thus taken advantage of. Scyther also absolutely hated losing its Eviolite. The one exception, being an already Mega Evolved Mega Autono, was still hampered by losing its base form's regenerator, and thus having to use Wish PP to heal, which was not at all ideal if Stealth Rock was also up, since it couldn't hold leftovers. This ability to leave the opponent's defenses crippled in some way meant Hariyama was hugely effective in creating openings for its more offensive teammates, all while providing the very necessary fallback option they needed against opposing offensive threats. Assault Vest Hariyama was one of the best, most consistently important and defining Pokemon of Gen 6 and U. The 2014 VGC format's restriction to the Kalos decks gave Hariyama a small window of opportunity by which to climb back into the VGC scene. Hitmontop's absence from the format meant that Hariyama had one fewer competitor to deal with. However, the biggest benefit to Hariyama's usage was actually the introduction of the Fairy type. And while that may seem counterintuitive because Hariyama didn't like running into fairies, Scrafty liked running into them even less, meaning Hariyama's role compression as both Trick Room supporter and sweeper went up in value. Gen 6 also provided Hariyama with Assault Vest, which it could use to trade in power for longevity if it was necessary. Hariyama still wasn't by any means a top tier threat, but it put up a few respectable regional performances throughout the 2014 season, with Allison McDonald taking 11th at Orlando and Paula Meddy taking 7th in Brisbane. Hariyama performed especially well with the core of Gothitelle, who could set up Trick Room and also had a nice type synergy with Hariyama. Ben Hickey used that strategy to make 34th at Worlds with an Assault Vest Hariyama and Mega Mawile. But the highest placing Hariyama was at the hands of Aaron Cybertron Zhang, who took 18th with a slightly unusual build alongside Mega Kangaskhan and Gothitelle. Aaron developed a highly specialized Hariyama along with Alex Gomez, who piloted the same team to a top 8 finish in the seniors division that year. Aaron and Alex used a highly specialized EV spread that let Hariyama survive Specs Hydreigon's Draco Meteor with no Assault Vest, and similarly take a Jolly Mega Lucario's close combat. Meanwhile, this Hariyama's attack investment let its own close combat one-hit KO opposing Mega Kangaskhan. I mentioned earlier that Aaron and Alex didn't use Assault Vest, but they also neglected to use a Status Orb. Instead, they used Citrus Berry, which gave Hariyama incredible longevity when paired with Gothitelle's Heal Pulses. Meanwhile, Guts could still give Hariyama a nicely appreciated boost if it baited a Will-O-Wisp. The final piece of neat tech on this Hariyama was its moveset, which took advantage of some of Hariyama's other neat support moves in Knockoff and Helping Hand. Knockoff let Hariyama hit opposing Gothitelle, Gengar, and Aegislash for big damage, and let Hariyama shrug off some of the burden of being a main attacker to instead support Kangaskhan or Salamence. Aaron continued to use a version of this team with Hariyama in the tournaments after Worlds to great success, winning Philadelphia Regionals and placing 4th in Houston. He may have been one of the sole standard bearers for Hariyama in 2014, but that flag flew high. Despite VGC 2015 reintroducing Hitmontop back into the meta, Hariyama managed to hold on to its niche as a Trick Room support mon, and several dedicated players still managed to make Hariyama work. Carl Concepcion took 1st place at the Virginia Regionals with Hariyama, and Arben Tamaning took 7th at the same tournament. Both players used an updated version of the Gothitelle Mawile Hariyama core from 2014 that subbed in Cresselia for Gothitelle. Amar Beg used a Trick Room setup alongside with Mega Camerupt and Cofagrigus to place 6th in Missouri, and Carl Concepcion used a modified version of his Virginia team to take 8th later at Georgia in the spring. Meanwhile, across the pond, Eugenio Discalzi established established himself as an acolyte of the Hariyama Cresselia Mawile Corps by using the same team to place 4th at the UK Regionals and 29th in Italy. However, as the metagame developed, Hariyama found itself hard-pressed to be relevant. The introduction of Therian forms made 2015 a hard year to be a fighting type in, and as the metagame shifted more towards Kangaskhan, Hariyama was clearly not the superior fake-out user. By the time Worlds came around, Hariyama's minor usage had all but evaporated. Eugenio's application of his same Hariyama at Worlds didn't go so smoothly, as he finished outside the top 40 of the tournament, ending Hariyama's 2015 on a sour note, and as an extension, its Gen 6 as a whole. 2016's primal-based meta was no place for Hariyama, whose middling power was utterly ineffective, and who couldn't offer the same support as its eternal rival Hitmontop. And oh yeah, there was a stupidly strong fairy-type deer mucking things up too. Assault Vest Hariyama returned to NU in the 7th generation. Its resistances to fire, ice, and dark were highly useful in a metagame filled with Incineroar, Sneasel, and Mega Glalie. Unfortunately, Incineroar also had those resistances while packing Intimidate, Stab on its knockoff, and U-Turn. Since it brought such similar qualities to its team, it often competed with Hariyama for a spot, and since Incineroar was the best Pokemon around, and I'm sure I'm gonna say that sentence in the next section, Hariyama was often forgotten. And it didn't help there was another fighting type Pokemon in the metagame that was incredibly useful and highly popular, Choice Scarf Passimian, which also kept the momentum with U-Turn and crippled walls with knockoff while checking a wider array of opposing Pokemon and generally having more use in battles thanks to its excellent speed. To top it off, Passimian and Incineroar made great natural partners. The two made for a much better offense while being just as good, arguably better on defense. They were better individually, and when one considered how good they were as a pair, well, Hariyama was usually forgotten. However, it unfortunately couldn't even catch enough of a break in this regard, as it wasn't quite forgotten enough for its usage to drop to PU, where it would have been an excellent Pokemon. The 7th generation was unfortunately quite rough for Hariyama in singles. Then in VGC 2017, just as with 2014, Hariyama had the blessing of being one of the fighting types included in the regional decks of the new games. And this time, it had even less competition, as none of Scrafty, Hitmontop, or Conkeldurr were included. As such, 2017 gave it a chance to reappear once more, doing the same things it always had, faking out opponents and making use of Trick Room. In this regard, Hariyama greatly appreciated the introduction of Mimikyu, who could get an almost guaranteed Trick Room off, especially with fake out support. However, the dearth of viable bulky fighting types in 2017 meant Hariyama could occasionally find success on non-Trick Room teams as well. As Hariyama started to perform more based on its typing and bulk, many players started using thick fat variants, especially alongside pinch berries for additional longevity. Hariyama found success from the early days of 2017. I apologize if I butcher your names. European internationals saw Ben Kiriako and Tobias Kojicki place 4th and 6th respectively with Hariyama. Gavin Michaels showed everyone that Hariyama had the chops to win tournaments by taking home the trophy at San Jose Regionals with a neat Trick Room team using Drampa, then repeated the feat at Anaheim Regionals, subbing out Drampa for Snorlax. Hariyama actually won quite a few regionals throughout the year, including Andrew Nowick's victory at Madison, and an especially good performance at Fort Wayne, where it was on both the 1st and 2nd place teams of Alex Underhill and Abe Braff. Hariyama even performed well on the national scale, as Shin Jung-hoon won the Korean Nationals with it, and Alexis Picardo used its power to become the champion of Mexico. Reigning world champion at the time, Wolf Glick, used it alongside his favorite pet, Tapu Bulu, to place 9th at the Oshina Internationals, and his training partner, Marcus Statter, aka 13 Yoshi 37, used the same duel for a 6th place finish at the North American Internationals. Come World season, Hariyama had eked out a place as the arguable best fighting type in the format and a noteworthy threat. A remarkable feat given that pretty much every team had at least one fairy type island guardian rounding it out. Hariyama had just under 10% usage at Worlds and even had a top 8 appearance at the hands of Reen Alvarenga. Reen's Hariyama was a little cute in its build too, as it had Feint to hit through opposing protects and Wide Guard to protect his own team. Overall, 2017 was easily Hariyama's most successful VGC outing ever, but it was a short-lived success. The introduction of Fake Out Incineroar utterly invalidated almost all other Fake Out users, and Hariyama had miserable matchups against most of 2018's strongest Pokemon, such as Mega Salamence, Mega Charizard Y, Mega Gengar, and of course, Landorus Therian. Of course, 2019 brought back all the same problems as in 2016. So Hariyama followed the same trajectory as always. A brief success followed by an immediate spiraling descent. And that's it. So how good was Hariyama actually? Well, it's been a Pokemon passed over by OU, and it has been unspectacular in the lower tiers, but has always had a placement in the metagame thanks to its numerous unique traits, ranging from the potential offensive thrashing it could dish out to important defensive utility. It definitely had its issues, which led to it being on and off useful throughout the generations, but in the grand scheme of things, Hariyama was alright. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for weekly Pokemon content, and in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Hariyama? If it was in Sword and Shield, how do you think it would do? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for voting for this Pokemon and for continued support of our videos. And follow my crew on these social media platforms, and that's all I got. See you next time, everyone. Happy 2020.